Hi, welcome to the Swim Parent Podcast. I'm your host, Roxana Purdue. Today, I'm excited to welcome Olympian and open water specialist Ashley Twichell. Ashley's a multi-time world champion and Olympic open water swimmer who continues to compete at an elite level. She represented Team USA in the women's 10K open water race at the 2020 Summer Olympics and has been one of the top distance swimmers in the world for more than a decade. She was 32 at her Olympic Games debut, which made her the oldest first time American swimmer at an Olympic Games since 1908. In addition to her incredible swimming career, Ashley is also the mom of two, balancing elite training, racing, and family life in Cary, North Carolina. I know very little about open water swimming. Ashley was very patient and answered all of my most basic questions and made it sound like an adventure of a sport where you get to travel, meet new people, experience different distances, weather, courses, currents, and conditions. It actually sounds like a lot of fun. Please enjoy my interview today with Ashley Twichell. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thanks so much for doing this and taking your time to talk to me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
There's so many things I could talk to you about because you have this amazing background, experience, Olympic, long distance, open water. But really, what I wanted to focus on first was just open water swimming and the joy and beast of it all. I know there are open water races of multiple distances, but to set the stage, I'm going to read the 10K open water swimming description from the LA28 Olympics website. It says, open water swimming sees athletes swim over a 10-kilometer course in vast natural bodies of water like lakes, rivers, and oceans. As a head-to-head contest, this aquatic race demands an incomparable rigor from its swimmers and an ability to adapt quickly as they navigate unpredictable elements, including currents, water temperature, and marine life. Incidental contact is permitted, so athletes must bring strategy and physicality to the race in addition to endurance. Despite races lasting about 2 hours, finishes are often separated by hundredths of a second, making open water swimming one of the most dramatic events of the games. That sounds really exciting, but also super intense. Would you say that that's an accurate description of your experience of open water swimming?
I would say it's really accurate. Yeah, especially, the incidental contact is permitted. The races are definitely really physical. I'd say more so internationally than domestically, but
Okay.
and it's honestly probably like my least favorite part of open water swimming. Like
Yeah.
I that's where I kind of prefer the pool, like having my own space and my own lane, but it's also
Yeah.
something I've just kind of had to get accustomed to and try to
Sure.
become as comfortable as possible with. But yeah, I mean, it has so many variables to it, which is exciting. And in some ways it's similar, it's still swimming to like pool swimming, but in a lot of ways it's so different. And then yeah, I think, like they said, the 10K is a 2-hour race, but it does often come down to just seconds. I think, at World Championships in 2019, which was the race I qualified for the Olympics in, I
Yeah.
think 10 were separated by like 2.7 seconds or
Oh,
something. The 11th place girl who missed making the Olympics, it was like I think a tenth of a second, and it's in a 2-hour race. So
yeah.
it's definitely an endurance sport, but you've got to have some speed too.
That's incredible. It does sound really exciting, but compared to competitive pool swimming, it's just such a lesser known sport, at least in my experience, which is why I wanted to talk about it a little bit today. Ask some questions for anyone who'd be interested in trying it themselves or getting their kids into it. I wanted to talk through some of the basics with you. So the incidental contact is permitted stuck out to me too when I when I first read that. So what does that mean? Are people actually trying to, I know everyone's in there tight, but are people doing it on purpose?
Yeah, I mean, I think some more than others for sure.
Sure,
My
sure.
typically favorite place to be is either like on the outside of the pack or like leading. And
Okay.
like a lot of times that isn't ideal because obviously if you're leading, you're expending a little bit more energy than someone who's, sitting back and drafting. But for
Mm-hmm.
me, I feel like I expend a lot of energy, physical definitely, but like mental. If I'm in the middle of a pack, it is just like I'm stressed, I'm anxious about like getting hit, and so I like to be kind of have my own space, whether that's towards the outside or towards the front, and obviously that can't always happen. But
Sure.
yeah, like the start, it can be different. Sometimes it's an in-water start, sometimes you're starting from like a pontoon, but my first international race was in 2011 at World Championships, and I think there were like 70 women in the race, and we started from a dock. So it was a dive start, and it was 50 meters to the first turn. So you had 70 girls just like, and it was a
Whoa.
90-degree turn. So you have just 70 women, like 50 meters, so 30 seconds, like trying to get around a little buoy. It was just like, I mean, it's chaos. And like that's a lot of times what open water can be. And then so I really would say around the start and around turns is really where it's the most contact. And some of it's incidental and some of it's not. I mean, people are kind of jockeying for everyone wants to be in the ideal position, right? And so you
Mhm.
have to be a little bit aggressive sometimes to get into that position. And then ideally, once people have settled into positions, um, you have a little bit of courtesy, but and there's officials calling yellow cards and red cards, but there's only so much they can see when there's stuff going on underwater and all that. And from what I've heard, the women are more physical than the men. Who knows if that's true? But the women's race can get, yeah, they can it can get really physical.
We mentioned that you swam in the Olympic 10-kilometer course, but what are some of the other more common distances for open water? What is the range?
So yeah, so the Olympic distance, the only distance in the Olympics right now is the 10K, and
Okay.
then at World Championships up until I think the last Worlds was the first one they didn't have it, but they've always had the 5K for individual races, the 5K, the 10K, and the 25K. So I've done the 25K one time.
Wow.
I think that was the only time I'll ever do it. And
Wow.
then for not for like World Aquatics races, but they'll have like mile open water races, like I've done like the Tiburon Mile and a mile race in South Africa. And honestly, like those are probably my favorite races. I love an open water mile. That's like my favorite. And a lot of times those are just like straight shots, like point to point. So you don't have
Okay.
to worry about turns and like we just talked about all the physicality kind of. But the most common and just because it's the Olympic distance is the 10K.
So, okay, yeah, that was one of my questions is you're not always swimming a loop. Some of them are from one point to another and you finish a
Yeah, I've
different
done
location.
I think actually every single one except one of my 10Ks has been loops. So that can range
Okay.
and I've done 10Ks that are 4 loops and I've done 5 and 6 laps is kind of the most common, but I've also done one that's been 8 laps, so like a 12:50 8 times, and then I've done one 10K that was a point to point. It was a race um in Canada, Okanagan, and it was across the lake, and it was like we drove to the start and started at one point and finished at another. And so that one, you actually had to have a kayaker next to you because that was the way you got fed during the race was from your kayaker. So that was interesting, but those are pretty rare. It's almost always laps.
So I'm glad you brought up feeding 'cause that's something you don't see in, pool swimming.
Uh-huh.
Is it only above a certain distance that you would need a feeder? Is that
Yeah,
or is it
the
every
5K yeah, the 5K you don't feed. I mean, some people maybe have a gel in their suit and would take it, I've never done that. The
Okay.
7.5, which I've never done, but they're starting to offer that, like, at the junior level, and I think they do feed during that, and then definitely 10K and above, there's you don't have to feed, but it's always an option.
And so then if there's a kayaker doing the feeding, is that one kayaker for everyone swimming or everybody has their
Yeah, so
own
that
feeder?
was just the point to point race, that's, like, super
Okay.
not common. So, for, like, a typical race where it's laps, there'll be, like, a feeding dock. Once in a while, there's 2 feeding docks at different points of the course, but almost always it's just 1 feeding dock, and then each swimmer has a feeder who's typically, like, a coach or some type of support personnel, and then there's the feeding stick with, like, a cup attached at the end and all the feeders will hold out the sticks, and then you kinda grab the cup as you swim by, like, tread water on your back, drink whatever it is, and then keep on going. And
Wow.
the feeding stations can be really physical too, I forgot that one.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, because
Like
everyone's coming in and grabbing and moving around. Okay.
yeah, and then if you have someone, like, if the person leading the pack, if their feeder is, like, first on the dock and they're coming up to theirs first and, like, the whole pile behind them, like that person has basically stopped feeding. And so that whole pile behind them like piles up if they don't see it and go rest. So it can be, I mean, and some people like being at the front of the feeding station, some people like being at the back, but you never really know what you're going to get until you get like into the race and right in the moment.
So what about swimsuit, tech suit? Is that different than pool swimming?
Yeah, so you can wear, suits to the ankle, so it's like the same tech
Okay.
suit, it's just extended from the knee, it's just all the way to the ankle instead of stops at the knee, and so, um, most always you like, even I was, for, like, warm water races now, even, like, the Olympics was a really warm water race, but still everyone wears it to the ankle just because it's faster. The more suit you have
Oh.
covering you, the faster, so, some of the guys wear just legs, but most of them, I would say, wear, like, all the way up and to the ankle.
And so it's for racing faster, it's not for keeping you warm, the
Yeah,
legs.
no, it's for racing faster. The legs, I
Okay.
mean, it does definitely help if it's cooler water, but yeah, it's for racing faster.
So you're navigating unpredictable elements, including currents, water temperature, and marine life. So I would think that sometimes the water is pretty cold when you start. Have you done races like that?
Yeah, definitely. I've done so they've in 20 gosh, I don't even know what year it was. Maybe 2018, World Aquatics instituted a rule where I think if it's between I mean, they do everything in Celsius since it's international, but I think if
Yeah.
it's like between 64 and 68 Fahrenheit, wetsuits are optional. But if they're optional, pretty much everyone's going to wear them just because they're, again, a
Okay.
wetsuit's a lot faster. So basically,
Mhm.
below 68, you can wear a wetsuit now. Above, you can't. But that wasn't a rule till 2018. So my Olympic qualifier in 2011 was in Portugal, and the water was like 61. It was so, so cold, and honestly, I
Yeah.
didn't think about it a ton while I was racing, but, like, the practice days leading up, it was brutal, like, painfully cold.
So if you're practicing for a specific route, a race route, you get to swim it the days beforehand. Like you could get there a few days early.
Yeah,
That's
so
a
almost
typical.
always.
Okay.
Yeah, and so even, like, for, for, like, open water nationals coming up next month, it's a course that we've done before. It's, like, in a rowing basin, so it's pretty flat water, there's not a ton of current or anything like that, and so the course might be open a couple days before, but I'll likely, like, just get on the day before because 'cause I've swum it before, I kind of know it, but I will
Okay.
wanna get it on it at least once. But for, like, a world championships or a World Cup or something like that, we would probably try to get on the course, a couple times if it's open and available. And again, that depends on variables, like, sometimes, depending on weather, if they're not able to set up the whole course or whatnot, you can get on part of it, but, we definitely try to get on it at least once just so you can kind of get a feel for where buoys are, what you're trying to cite and things like that.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about that sighting. There's some skills that you need to have to be able to swim well because as we've mentioned, there's a lot going on around you. The water isn't crystal clear like a pool. So
Mhm,
sighting's one of them, right? What are some other
mhm.
things one would learn if you're trying to do an open water race?
Yeah, so I think citing is a big one. I think, before my first, like, big race that I actually like, that I did well in, which was Oklahoma Nationals in 2012. I did it in 2011 too, but it really didn't go well. But before 2012, I actually went to the open water select camp, and
Okay.
they we worked on a lot of stuff, and I like credit that camp a lot to me performing well in nationals, which was kind of at the end of the camp, because they taught a lot of those things that you don't need in the pool that are kind of new to open water. And so sighting is a big one. Drafting is another big one. We kind of touched on it a
Mm.
little bit earlier, but that plays a huge, huge role in a race. Feeding, like we talked about, is a really big one, and turns. I would say those are kind of the four major ones. Obviously, there's still different like nuances that are different to pool swimming, but a lot of the rest of the stuff is stuff you've done before. But those are the four things that um, are kind of totally separate that you would never really have done if you've only swum in the pool before.
Any clips of open water races that I've seen, swimmers are doing freestyle. They're swimming freestyle, but is any stroke allowed? And do you ever do other strokes?
Yeah, other strokes are definitely allowed. I think the only thing you would really see anyone doing is backstroke, and the times
Okay,
you would and it's not like you're doing like a 50 backstroke in there, but
sure.
let's say like once in a while, like if I have taken like a lead, I'll do like maybe a like a stroke of backstroke just to see where other people are, or if like you've broken away in a pack of 3 and you like kind of want someone else to take the lead for a little bit, you might do a backstroke stroke. Some people do like going around a buoy, they'll do like almost like a corkscrew, so like a backstroke
Mm.
stroke in there to turn. But really, I mean, it's almost always freestyle. I did in my 25K World Championships, I had to do a couple strokes of breaststroke because I was like, I literally don't think I can lift my arms out of the water anymore. But um, that's not advice. That's just what I had to do to survive.
I know I would think that you might wanna switch it up just to kind of use some other muscles for a few minutes just to take a quick
Yeah, I mean,
break.
even like at the feeding station, like I said, a lot of times like you'll be taking the feed with one hand and like doing some backstroke, and even that is just like you need the feed like for physical reasons, but like mentally, it's just a nice like break. You lift your head up for a second, you do a backstroke stroke, and then you keep going.
Another thing I've seen is people talk about bilateral breathing because more advanced pool swimmers will choose one side to breathe for freestyle and stick with that. Is
Mhm.
it important to breathe both sides for open water?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to at least be comfortable taking some breaths to your non-dominant side. So in the pool, like 95% of the time breathe to my right. But once I started open water, and and competing in open water more regularly, I learned to at least become comfortable like taking a breath to my left, just in case, like I said, sometimes you don't always end up where you want to in the pack. And so
Yeah.
if I'm completely to the right of a pack, like I need to be able to take a couple breaths to my left just to be able to see, make sure I kind of have an idea of where I am. And also it's I think another thing too is it's such a long race, like, it's just a nice little break to, like, turn your head the other way once in a while
Yeah.
instead of just, like, for 2 hours breathing to one side. But, I mean, I'm definitely still way more comfortable breathing to my right, and so I do like to be to the left of the pack if I can, but I'm, like, okay being to the right because I know I can take some rest to my left too. I'm definitely more comfortable sighting, like, when I breathe to the right, but, I can do both if I have to.
So the sighting and the breathing is to obviously, not go the wrong way to but also to keep an eye on the competitors, right? Like
Yeah,
s-
definitely. I
the
think for the
strategy
most part,
part.
you're sighting to see the buoys. If the buoys are hard to see, sometimes people will like find a landmark or a building or something like that to sight off of. But if someone or a group of people have broken away, you're going to be lifting up your head a lot more to kind of look to see where they are, how far away they are, that kind of thing as well.
And then I can imagine where strategy comes into play, but is that something that you know ahead of time before the race? Kind of what your strategy will be, or is that just experience, or is it change with every race depending on? I mean, and here's another question. Sorry, before I'm not even letting you answer, but do you know how your other competitors will swim, like what their strategy is, and then tailoring yours to theirs? How
Yeah,
much of
I think
that
it's a
is
mixed
at play?
I think it's a mixed bag. I think it's a little bit of everything. So, I definitely like to have like I definitely have an idea in my head of like an ideal race, what it would look like, but I've done it long enough to know that like I'll be really grateful if I have my ideal race, but like 9 times out of 10 it's not gonna happen, and so being able to roll with the punches is like even more important and kind of, like I think a really good just motto for open water is expect the unexpected. Like you really don't know what's gonna happen. A lot of the times, like you have an idea of what other people are gonna do. You have an idea of how other people like to swim, where they like to be in the pack, if they like to lead, if they like to sit back, when they like to take off. But like you always have to be kind of like have your radar up and see if people are going to make a move, when they're going to make a move. And people can make a move really, really quick. And if you don't respond quickly, sometimes it's a long race, but sometimes you can't make it back up. So you definitely kind of have to always be on your toes, which again can be hard because it's a really long race. But um, I think just having like a loose strategy in mind is always a good idea, but being able to kind of roll with the punches.
And I guess, all the training helps you know what you're capable of, what kind of pace you can sustain. If somebody moves up all of a sudden, you have to decide, can I keep up with them or do I need to save it for later?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think and that's I guess kind of what I meant by like when someone makes a move, like you want to be right there because if you're right there and you're able to stay on their toes and you have a draft, it's easier than like if someone breaks away and there's a gap, it's way harder to kind of make that up, especially if you're not like working with other people to do that. And it's not like running or cycling where you can like talk to other people. Like it's like your face is in the water. So like
Yeah.
most of the time you're kind of on your own. But yeah, I think for the most part, yeah, listening to your body and knowing, I think ideally you have some like comfortable, easy speed for the majority of the race and wherever you are in the pack, and then at some point, be able to have that finishing speed, and that kind of depends on the race. Whether sometimes people, go for it with 3K left, and sometimes it comes down to like everyone's kind of waiting and no one wants to make a move and there's 300 meters left and then people go. So again, that just kind of depends on the race.
And do team members work together as a group for races? For
Y-
some races?
Yeah, I think that depends too. But yeah, I think again, like I said, it's kind of hard because you can't like verbally talk, so that makes it a
Yeah.
little bit more difficult. But I know, especially like internationally, whether it was a Worlds or a World Cup or the Olympics, like whenever you saw a cap with an American flag on it, like I think everyone would agree, like it's always nice. Somebody next to them, you can work together. Give yourself a little bit of space, but draft and work together, and
Okay.
that definitely comes into play. Yeah, people from the same countries will definitely work together in that way.
And is it because, like you said, is it because, okay, we're from the same country, we're after the same goal, or do people train together and practice?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's more like if you find yourself next to someone that you can, like, work together, you will. And, like, again, like, in an international race, I'll just take, like, the Olympics, for example, like, Haley and I, we were together for some of it and next to each other, and it's just like almost like a sense of comfort, which sounds silly, but also,
Yeah.
like, we're not going to be like, there's none of that, like, non-incidental contact. Like, we're gonna be giving
Yeah.
each other space, like, working together, and so that helps a lot too, and you're not, like, banging into someone every, 50 meters or whatnot.
Back to the incidental contact. I know that I've seen some swimmers duct tape caps on, or is that to
Yeah,
keep the cap from getting ripped off?
it's 2 reasons to keep
Okay.
sometimes the cap can, if someone's and a lot of times that's not that is incidental, but if someone's
Yeah.
arm, brushes the top of your head or whatever, it can cause it to come up, and then just like, a lot of people's caps start to slide off in practice anyway, and then in a 2-hour
Yeah.
race, it just and so
Of
just to not have to,
course.
like, pull it down all the time, and so I think,
Okay.
it's for both reasons. Used to always duct tape, I don't really anymore, I just kind of have faith it'll stay on, but yeah, a lot of people do the duct tape just to kind of ensure it'll stay put.
And your goggles will stay put through a long race like that too?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, like, if you get knocked, they'll get water in them, and then but the nice thing is it is a long race, so a lot of times, even if you just turn onto your back and, like, flip them, you'll have
Got
time. A lot
time.
of people will give an extra pair of goggles to their feeder just in case they, like, come all the way off, they happen to lose them, the feeder could throw them another pair of goggles.
Yeah, that's nice. I can't imagine doing a whole race like that without goggles.
Yeah, in
Um,
2011, our nationals was in or 2012, Open Water Nationals was in, 11, it was in Fort Lauderdale, and it was, like, 10-foot, like, swell. It was so, so wavy and in the ocean, so obviously really salty. This girl who qualified for Worlds, Claire Thompson, her goggles got knocked off at, like, 2K. She swam the whole race without her goggles and qualified for Worlds, and her eyes were just, like,
no.
gone
No.
at the yeah, I've still to this day don't know. I mean, and I could do chlorine without goggles, I could not do salt water. I would be
No.
ruined.
Oh
Yeah,
my goodness. And I
yeah.
mean, I wear contacts. Like I would be totally screwed. Everything would be flushed out. I wouldn't be able to see
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, I still to this day, I'm like, "I don't know how you did that."
That would be
It's
a
so impressive.
disaster. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness. And then
yeah.
I've seen Vaseline too. What purpose does that serve for open water
Yeah, the
swimming?
Vaseline is mainly, just to avoid the chafing, so especially with, like, saltwater races, so a lot like, you'll usually put it, like, under your straps, like, the armpit area, just to avoid the chafing there. Some people put it on their ankles, just for the suit down there, and then also if people are, like, constantly touching your ankles, it kinda deters that a little bit, but that's mainly for, like, chafing, so to not get those, like,
Okay.
rubs.
Is your finish time important, or is the finish placement more important? Or
It's the
is it
place.
depend on the race? Oh, it's always on the
No, it's
place?
the pla yeah, I mean, can count on, like, one hand the number of times I've finished an open water race and have, like, looked or wondered or cared about my time. Like, it just because every race is so different, like, the actual length is probably a little different, the course is different, the currents are different, and so, um, it really, like, so I've done some races that are, like, an hour and 45 minutes because the current is crazy, and I've done some races that are, like, 2 hours and 15 minutes. So, really, I don't think anyone really pays attention to time except for, like, it's always interesting to see the difference between, like, the men and women's winning time or lead pack times. It's usually around 10 minutes, but
Okay.
sometimes it's interesting to see, like, "Oh, that must have been a fast race because the women were only 8 minutes behind the men," or the men must have been moving fast. So you can gauge it a little bit based on that, but, like, overall time, it really, um, doesn't mean a whole lot.
I saw something recently, it was like a knockout type event
Mhm.
where
That's
people swam
new. I haven't done that yet.
swam a certain distance and only the certain top whatever that qualified moved on to the next round.
Yeah,
I thought that's
they're
pretty
having that
interesting.
at our nationals, next month, so I'm really excited to do that. I've never done that, and that I was saying, like, the mile is my favorite open water distance, so I'm actually really excited for it's a 3K knockout, so they'll do it's a
Okay.
1,500, and then the top 20, I think it's top 20, uh, women will move on, and you have, I think it's like 10-minute break, and then you do 1,000, and then the top 10 women have like a 10-minute break, and then you do a 500.
Wow.
And they have that at Worlds now too. So yeah, I'm excited to try that. I've never done it, but I think it's a cool event.
What's it like observing an open water race from land? Like, when anything I've seen online, there's either a drone or, something above where you can see the swimmers, or you can see the boats, you can see the kayaks. What is it like to watch that on land? Do they have screens? Do they have ways to track the swimmers'
They Yeah,
placement?
so, it depends on the course and it depends on the race itself, but for the most part, they've been trying to make the races, like, pretty spectator friendly. So, like, in Sarasota, you can, pretty much walk the whole length of it. So, for half of
Oh,
the course, they're over a little bit on the other side of the basin. It's like a rectangle course. But you can still see them the whole time, and then they will have, like, a screen too where the race is projected, and they'll have, like, the lead pack, and they'll have an announcer that you can hear too, who's kind of giving a play-by-play, and that's what they try to do a lot of, world championships and international races too, but for some races, like, you'll see the swimmer more so internationally. For our domestic races, they try to make them pretty spectator friendly. You'll see the swimmers, like, in the beginning for 200 meters, and if they have to go, like, out on a 1,200-meter loop, that's you don't really see them for 10 minutes and they're back again. But for the most part, either you can see most of the course or there's a screen with, an announcer, so you get a good idea. And then also there's typically, like, splits, and at international races, they'll have, typically, like, a timing station or, like, a timing arc, like, halfway down the course, so you'll at least get splits, like, halfway and get an idea of where people are.
I don't know anyone in my immediate family who swims open water. We've started to make some friends whose kids swim, and I'm just fascinated because it's just so cool. It just seems like an adventure. It seems like a really cool challenge, and so I'm totally fascinated by swimmers like you. And I interviewed Becca on this podcast too,
Oh, you did?
and loved her talking about how she just feels so free in open water, not held in by the lanes of the pool.
Yeah, it's fine. When you were asking all the questions, as you were going, I was like, it's just, like, kinda second nature to me now. I've been doing it for so long, like, even, like, getting ready for a race, I'm so used to everything, but as you're like, the currents and the Vaseline and the sighting, I'm like, "This is kind of a wild sport."
Becca posts a lot of videos on her social media too, and I recently she was showing her getting ready for an event, and
Mhm.
talked about checking fingernails,
Yeah,
right? So
that's another really big one, yep.
that's a part of like prepping for the race to start.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have to cut them like on the spot, or they just make sure that they're a certain length?
So they make sure they're a certain length, but I've several times, and I used to always get, like, the dip powder, and so I would, like, think they were short, like, I'd get them done as short as I could, but if I'd get to venue and they'd have to be shorter. You have to like those are you can't just like normal clip. They'd be like I have to like
No.
break them.
Yeah.
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 So now
Oh,
I just put nothing on them so I can just easily like clip them if I have to. But yeah, I see
yeah.
another funky thing that I wouldn't have even thought of, and I'm like that is a little very
It's
different.
a little different. Nobody's
Yeah.
cutting their
Yeah.
nails before a pool race.
No.
Um, and then I think most people might know this, but you've got numbers either written
Mhm.
on your back or your arm, similar to triathlons. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah.
Just so
So
they can
arm
spot
and back
you.
and yeah, yep. I think really just for safety and hand and typically like yeah, like tattoos or Sharpie. But yeah, and just to be able to identify too for safety and for the announcer, I think it's probably a little bit easier too.
It really is such a different different sport. It's swimming, but
It is.
it's different swimming.
It is, which is why I try to tell everyone who tries it, like, try it, but and try it at least twice because like my first race went so, so bad. Like I was a distance swimmer and I had swum in open water before. Like I grew up on vacation swimming in the ocean with my dad, but I never raced. And it's just there's so many variables like we talked about. And so just give
Right.
yourself a chance to get used to it.
You were mainly a pool swimmer growing up, like competitive swimmer
I was, yeah, really
growing up?
only
Yeah.
pool. Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
And
came from a
then
really small club team, so I didn't do much
okay.
yardage or anything like that.
So
Uh,
how old were you when you did your first open water swimming?
I swam just like with my dad on vacation in the ocean. We would do like a couple miles. And then I
Nice.
used to do the Swim Across America races and not races, events. Growing up, I'm from New York, so I would do the Long Island Sound one with my family. That was like a 4 mile swim and I loved that. And then, um, my Duke coach, in college suggested going to open water nationals the summer after my junior year. So I was like, I might as well give it a shot. So that was my first one.
So you swam at Duke as a long distance swimmer, and then your coach suggested you try open water?
Yeah, he was like,
Yeah.
it's distance swimming and it was out in California. So me and a teammate went out there just kind of for fun, but the water was freezing. I didn't feed at all. Again, like I had no clue what I
Oh,
was doing. So yeah, it was brutal. And it was a 10K and then 2 days later the 5K. And I think I got like second to last in the 10K. And
and
my
you
mom
did
and my
both?
coach like, the 10K was first, and my mom and my coach were both like, "Yeah, well, open water is not for you. You don't have to do the 5K." And I was like, "If I don't do the 5K, I will never touch open water again." And so I made myself do it, and it was half the distance. So there's no feeding or anything. It was half the distance, so I didn't get as cold, and it went way better. And then the next summer, I was invited to the open water slut camp where I actually was taught like the feeding and the sighting and the drafting. So then the next race was a whole lot better.
And is that typical to go to an event, there's 2 distances and you swim both? Do most people do that?
It is pretty yeah, they do. And so, like, our nationals, world championships, so, like, most of them are maybe a little more spread out, like, a world championships is typically over the course of, like, 6 days. But there's relays, there's the 5K, there's the 10K, and so people do typically do multiple events,
Yeah, so
which,
that's
like,
I mean,
it is pretty brutal to do a 5K 48 hours after doing a 10K.
I c That's insane. I mean, I know
Yeah,
pole swimmers are doing multiple events, but it's not adding up to that sort of distance,
yeah,
so that seems like a lot,
it can
but
be brutal, for sure.
and it seems like within a couple of days, the conditions could change too.
Totally, like, and yeah, and again, not as much now that they're doing more and more, like, in a rowing basin or a lake, but, um, like, in 2011, the 10K it was in the ocean, and so the 10K on a Friday was, like, 6-foot waves, like, they held the men and women's races at the same time, but, like, 10 minutes apart, and, like, so the men were, coming back as we were going this way, and, like, the men were crashing into the women. You couldn't see anything. It was just, like, craziness, and then 2 days later, the 5K was, like the ocean looked like a pool. Like, it literally couldn't have been flatter. So, like, 2, like, totally like, you couldn't have had more opposite conditions.
So it seems like that would be an important part of it. To be a good open water swimmer is just embrace the conditions that you're handed. You can't control any of
Definitely.
that.
You have to be, like, okay with knowing that. Like, there's so much out of your control, and then I think for me, something that helps is remembering, like, no matter how, like, unfavorable the conditions are, they're the same for everyone. Whether it's cold water, whether it's waves, whether it's a super strong current, like they're the same for everyone. And so knowing that and then trying to use whatever it is to your advantage as much as possible.
So I guess that's why
Mhm.
I think you said this earlier too, but it's occurring to me again. I guess that's why placement is more important really than
Mhm.
time, right? Because
Definitely. Yep.
each race, the conditions could be different. You're all in there. You've been dealt the same hand, so let's see what you
Yeah.
can do with it. It does take a lot of mental toughness. How have you developed that?
I think just over time, I mean, I've always been someone who, like, I love training. I love pushing myself to the limits. Like I said, like my least favorite part of open water is definitely like the physicality of it, but I know that that's a huge part of it, and so kind of expecting it and, like, accepting it and knowing that it's
Yeah.
going to happen, and as much as I can, like, not letting it get to me mentally during the race. I think it can drain a lot of my energy, or I used to let it drain a lot of my energy, and just, like, knowing that I'm gonna get bumped, that I'm gonna be jostled, that I'm going to end up in a position I don't necessarily like, um, that might get destroyed around a turn, but, like, I've had that happen in races before, and I've still managed to have favorable outcomes, and so not, like, letting it defeat me when that happens, and, also not remembering that it's a really long race and there's time to make it up, and just I mean, I guess just, like, time, just learning mental toughness and being disciplined. I think, again, like, it's a long race, and the 10K is really interesting because you can go, like, in the middle of the race from, like, feeling so good to so bad to so good, like, your mind just can go and, like, 1 minute I'm thinking, like, "This is like, I feel so good and this feels comfortable and, like, it's going by so fast," and, like, literally 30 seconds later, I can be like, "I'm never gonna finish, this is so long," like, and so, like, letting those thoughts come and then, like, also knowing, like, when the negative thoughts are there, like, kind of just, like, letting them run their course and knowing that, like, positive thoughts will come again and not trying to, like, shut them out because 'cause they're there and, like, that's okay, and then I think
Yeah.
the other thing is remembering, like, everyone's hurting, like, no one is feeling amazing for an entire 10K, like, and I think that's like, I'll get in my head and be like, "I'm hurting, like, how is everyone else, like, going so fast and it's easy?" But, like, knowing, like, it's probably not easy for them either.
You're still swimming long distances in
Mhm.
the pool too, right? Just for training.
Yeah.
How do you see the two complementing each other, the pool swimming and open water? Like, so for anyone listening that is only ever done pool swimming but is considering open water, how would you say the training for those maybe complements each other?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's only ever helped me. I mean, for really since 2011, I've done both. I've competed in both. I've done 95% of my training in the pool, but, um I think for a couple of reasons. I think first of all, like mentally, it's always been really good for me. Like I said, like open water races, it can be tough and they can be grueling. And so like once I've done open water competition, I'm ready to do the pool and then kind of vice versa. And then in terms of training, like we said, like they're really long races, but a lot of times it comes down to the last couple minutes or and it's decided by a few seconds. And so having that speed from training in the pool definitely carries over and then, training distance and endurance for open water races only helps like the 1500 or the 800 feel shorter. And, like in a ready room before a 1500, if I'm like with some other girls who do open water, we're always like, it's just like the last lap of a 10K. Like it's so short. And so like having that mentality too can definitely help.
And no one's gonna be in my lane, no one's gonna be touching me,
Exactly. And you
there's
have
no
your own
there's no
space. Yeah.
currents. It must feel
Yeah.
so,
It's a dream.
simple. Yeah, so
Yeah.
simple compared to
Yeah,
the
for
open
sure.
water races. That's
Mhm.
awesome. I'm wondering if you have any other encouraging words or thoughts for parents who might want to, encourage their kids to try open water for the first time, or even adults, right? I know locally they've got small open water races in the lakes here
Yeah,
in North
lots
Carolina.
of them.
So
Yeah,
there's a
I
lot of
think
opportunities for people to try, right?
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think in terms of like club swimmers or kids or teenagers who are contemplating getting into it, or parents who are maybe contemplating having their kids get into it, I think it's just another opportunity. Like for me, open water, like, put me on my first national team and opened so many doors for me. And whether that's, like, at the zone level, they have so many meets now that I don't think they had when I was growing up, but, um so many different meets and zones and junior nationals and nationals, and so I think it's awesome to be, exposed to it for that reason, and also, like we just said, I think the 2 can complement each other so well. I think, doing open water races can really and open water and training for open water can really only benefit and help your pool swimming and your pool competitions, and then in terms of adults, like, I totally get that it's probably really intimidating to go out and do
Mhm.
an open water swim or race if you've never really been in open water, and I've heard of triathletes who, are really competent swimmers and good in the pool, and they go to do their first triathlon, haven't been in open water before, and, like, totally freeze up, and, like, I totally get it. I still, like, get panicked in the start of a race, and I've been doing it competitively for like, 15 years. But I think as much exposure as you can get is really big, and getting practice and maybe with someone who has a little bit of experience and can give you some tips. I think some small tips can go a really long way in open water, and, it's easier said than done, but, like, just trying to relax and breathe because swimming tense is, like, the hardest thing in the world to do, but that's kinda like the body's natural reaction in open water, especially if you're not comfortable with it. Like we said, there's so many variables, and then if you're not comfortable with sea life or whatever it is, and so just trying
Yeah.
to be, like, relaxed as possible, and I think starting really small, like, go out there and swim, like, 200 meters and
Mhm.
come back in. I think just, like, the baby steps can be really, really helpful.
That's really encouraging. And it helps to hear you talk about how much you love it and your positive experience swimming all your races. I
Yeah, I
also
mean,
wanted
it's, like, brought me all
go
over
ahead.
the world, so it's been so cool to, like, explore the world and, like, so many different bodies of water and, like, oceans and lakes, and it's been, like, the coolest thing in the world, so I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to do it.
I can imagine that would be pretty exciting, seeing different landscapes, different horizons, different sea life,
Mhm.
which seems scary but
For better
also
or for worse.
exciting. I'm sure the water feels different in all of those places too.
Mhm.
I can imagine. So
Yeah,
that's that's
it's really cool.
awesome. One big thing about you is that you're raising 2 young kids right now, but you're still an
Mhm.
elite athlete. You're still training. And I love that you share a lot of that on your social media. You're doing like get ready with me. I was at the pool when you swam 500 in November. It was one of your first
Mm.
times
Yeah.
swimming in a race after having your second
Mm.
child postpartum. It had been like 5 months at that point, and you shared about that on
Mhm.
on social media. I saw you swim and it was amazing. I know it wasn't your best time, but you looked so strong in the pool. Could
Thank
you
you.
talk for a few minutes about how being a mom, how has that impacted you as an elite athlete? I'm sure there's challenges, but have there been some things that have made you stronger through it as well?
Yeah, definitely. I didn't think it was possible to, like, well, get pregnant, give birth, raise kids, and continue to train and compete, and so I put off having babies for longer than I probably would have if swimming wasn't my career, just because I didn't think it was possible to do both. And honestly, after Tokyo, I was planning on retiring. We were so excited to start a family. And then throughout pregnancy, I stayed in the water, not like anything like what I had been doing, prior, but I stayed in the pool. I mainly swam with masters like 3 or 4 times a week. And then I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and then after having my son, I just like, once a couple months had passed by, I just really I wanted to be home. I wanted to be home with him, and now home with both of them, but I just needed something for myself. So I found my way back to the pool, and it started, like, really slow. It was interesting because I, like, was anxious to leave my son. I think I got back in the pool a little bit after I was cleared, so he was probably 8 weeks old. Um, and I was anxious to leave him, and it also felt like such a, mountain to climb to even, like, leave the house to get to the pool with a baby too, and so I started swimming midday masters. I would swim for like an hour, and my sister-in-law would come to the pool and watch my son there. And I was still nursing, and so that worked for a while, and then I got
Yeah.
comfortable enough, I think when he was probably like 4 or 5 months old, I started swimming in the mornings, my husband was home with him, and then that kind of increased and increased, and now like and then obviously I, went to trials, I was really happy with how I did, and then I had my second, um and I'm back into it again. I mean, the second time was easier just because I had already done it once and I kind of knew what to
Mhm.
expect. But I feel like I'm in a really good rhythm now of I swim 6 mornings a week and then I do either one or two doubles. And I have my in-laws are close by. My parents are here a lot. My brother's watches them. So I have a lot of family who can watch them, which is really nice. But yeah, in terms of kind of what's made me feel like stronger or things that have been made easier, I'm definitely more confident. I think I would have thought, like, that wouldn't necessarily be happy training the way I'm training because I would have thought, like, I used to swim 10 practices a week. Like, I should be training 10 practices a week. I could be doing better. But I'm just so, like, confident and at peace, like, with what I'm doing and knowing that, like, I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing. Like, I'm home with my kids for the majority of the time. And I also am training really well. Like, I feel like I've come back this postpartum a lot quicker and a lot faster than I did the first postpartum. I stayed in the water a lot more in my second pregnancy than my first, but and I also think I'm just like more in tune with my body. I don't think
Mm.
I'm necessarily like as physically strong or fit necessarily than I was before, but I just am like more like confident and like grateful too for like what like I've had shoulder surgery. I've always struggled with my shoulders. And so I've, especially like in the lead up to Tokyo and the Olympics, I was really frustrated with my body and like what, like all I wanted to
Mm.
do was train and like train how I wanted to train and compete. And like I felt like my shoulder was holding me back and I was frustrated. And now I'm like, I mean, I still struggle with my shoulder, but I'm like my body like grew these kids and birthed them and like now it's letting me swim and like I'm still breastfeeding too. And I'm like, it's just a different perspective and like such a fresh perspective, and it's still swimming is still so important to me, but like I swim and I train and then like I leave the pool and like I'm not thinking about like what I didn't like I don't have time to think about what I did in practice. Like I am like totally like involved with like I have a 9-month-old and 3-year-old. Like I don't have time to be thinking about like
No.
the time I went into practice or you know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
it's just been such and then like but when I'm swimming, like I'm totally at the pool and like I'm able to like totally focus on that. And I need that too. Like I need a little time for myself. And I like that my kids are able to see me doing for something for myself too. And like my son is old enough now to like be getting it a little bit. Like he's starting to do some sports himself too. So I just feel like I have found a really good balance that like 5 years ago I like never ever ever would have thought was possible. So I'm just really grateful for how it worked out and kind of where I'm at. And like I really take it day by day. I don't know like exactly what my goals are in terms of like 1, 2, 3 years from now, but like I'm okay with that too. Like I'm really happy in the now and feel really fulfilled. And so I think that benefits my training too and kind of my headspace going into to like training and competitions.
Yeah.
That was a really
I'm
long-winded answer.
No, that's great. That's exactly what I wanted to know. I mean, sometimes taking a step back and having a different perspective after having kids will give you that strength, that peace that you need to
Mhm.
continue and maybe even exceed goals that you had when you were younger. Yeah, so that's what I was asking. And I love that you share so much of your life, daily life, out with the kids, doing this, get ready with me. Here's what went wrong
Mhm.
today.
Yeah.
It's but and then you're also like in the pool swimming long distances. So it's cool to get a little glimpse.
It's been fun.
You said a little bit that you're not sure what the next few years looks like, but what goals do you have for this year? Like, what can we watch you swim somewhere in the next few months? Will you be in
Yeah,
competition
I'm going to compete in, Open Water Nationals, so the 10K is April 2nd, in
soon? Yeah.
Sarasota. It's really soon, yeah. It's crazy because I actually went Open Water Nationals was in Sarasota last year as well, and I went last year just to watch, and, Becca and Brooke were both competing, and so to watch them, but I was like I barely got clearance from my doctors. I was like 36 and like a day pregnant. So they were like, yeah, you're kind of
Oh,
pushing it 'cause I was
yeah.
flying. So again, like I didn't even know then, like if I would be competing this year, but I'm looking forward to it. I haven't done a 10K in a couple of years. So I'm excited for that. And then, depending how that goes, there could be some more competitions, later on in the summers. That's about as far ahead as I'm looking.
That's awesome. And that's something, can we watch that on USA Swimming, or where
Mhm.
do those
Yeah,
competitions?
those are typically streamed on USA Swimming. Yep.
I'm definitely going to check that out.
Yeah.
I'm so curious. I do think it's fun to learn more about the sport. And then if you know somebody that's swimming, it makes it more fun to watch and
Yeah,
cheer.
definitely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll check that one out. Where can people find you online? I mentioned your Instagram a few times, but do you have TikTok and other things too that people can check
Yes.
out?
Yeah, so my Instagram is ATWall616, and then Becca encouraged me to get a TikTok. She's heavy on the TikTok, so I have that.
Nice.
That's just Ashley Twichell is my handle on that. But yeah, Becca and I just have fun doing and, like, that's another thing, like, we'll, like, make TikToks at the end of practice, and, like, 6 years ago, like, I never would've done that, but it's just, like, we're having fun, and she came back out of retirement too, and, it's really cool to like, we were never teammates before. We did training camps and stuff together, but it's really fun to be training with her and um, we have like different and same goals that we used to, and we're both in different but similar spots. So it's just it's really fun and it's cool to do it with her.
Yeah, I think that would only benefit both of you, right? Just to have someone to have fun with, but also you're working hard, but also you're having
Yep,
fun. Just makes the
exactly,
daily grind go so much faster.
exactly.
Well,
Yep,
I'll put the both your Instagram and TikTok in the show notes of the podcast so people can find you there. And
awesome.
yeah, thanks so much for your time. We'll be cheering you on, and I'm excited to see what the rest of this year holds for you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for talking to me. Bye.
Yep, bye bye. Bye.
If you enjoyed my interview today with Ashley Twitchell, please like, subscribe, follow, and share. Leave a comment about what you liked and share it with someone else who might enjoy learning more about open water swimming. You can find Ashley on Instagram and TikTok. I'll link both of her accounts in the show notes. And you can watch her swimming next week at USA Swimming Open Water Nationals in Florida. The event can be streamed for free on the USA Swimming Network. Thanks so much for listening today. I'll see y'all next time on the Swim Parent Podcast.